In this episode, we look at some ideas on how to approach and write Chapter 4 of your thesis. Chapter 4 usually marks an exciting but daunting stage in the study. You have collected your data and have started the analysis process. Now you have to share this process and your findings with the reader. This process is comparable to a harvesting and selection process. What fits together and what to discard. In the discussion, Prof. Henning and Khadija use the sorting of tomatoes as a metaphor for the data analysis process.
Khadija, what's with the tomatoes?
So I just collected all these tomatoes now. I got these off, harvested them. They're still on the vine. And I've got orange ones. These are pretty. I like the color. And then there are different sizes and shapes and colors. But I don't really like these. And I've got some more of those. And then there are these green ones that are also kind of pretty. I've got a lot. So
are you going to put the same ones together or something? The ones that belong together?
I think so. You need to guide me.
Okay, let's see. But can we start with with the yellow ones? Everyone's that's yellow.
Okay. I'm putting them all together.
Yeah, even if they stand next to each other, it doesn't matter. On this little coaster. There are more yellows? Okay. Got a whole lot of yellows here.
Yeah.
Looks like we're going to make jam. Okay, more?
Tomato jam.
Yeah, we used to make tomato jam, but when you cook a jam, or you make a stew, you mix different things, but first you've got to find out what is it that you already have. So there's another red one there, little sister. Okay, so we've got quite a few groups of... Okay, this is enough to mix me up. Really mix me up. We have... Now you must tell me what you see here, because I see something funny here. How many yellows? Quite a lot, eh?
Yes.
So the dominant color here is yellow, but there's also a lot of red, but those reds are a little bit different because they're already stuck together. I'm going to put this one on top of them. Do you think it matches? Not entirely.
No.
Put it at the side. And those three little green ones. What is this color, by the way?
It's a combination of green and yellow.
Okay, so we will call this the combo color.
Combo color.
Things that sort of are together. I see how many groups of tomatoes? 4?
Yes.
Four groups of tomatoes.
And one outlier.
And one little outlier. And then the smallest group are these. They are not so important, but you're going to make a salad. This is for salad?
Yes.
Okay. So to have some color variation, we need to find out what's the dominant color so that we maybe are going to call this the yellow tomato salad or the yellow tomato jam. But then, oh no, it is going to be too mixed up. I think we're lost. You don't like these tomatoes?
No.
What did you expect?
I don't like those. I wanted all of them to look this pretty. These are not so nice.
But you are the one who planted the seeds, who sowed the seeds.
And they all came out looking different to what I expected.
And now what? When it's so mixed, what do you do with them if you want to make a salad?
I have to use them because they're there.
Good one. Okay, so which ones do you like least of these groups?
This one.
Can we get rid of them then? Not rid, we store them.
Okay.
And which one do you like best?
I like those best.
All right. And they are still on the vine.
Yes.
Okay, if I unpick them, will you still like them? And which one goes next into the bowl? Those sad little green ones?
Okay.
Now you have to put everything back into the bowl.
Okay.
Now you're mixing them up nicely. What a good motswako that is. Motswako is, I think that's one word for stew.
So these, am I putting them back on just...
You're putting them on top because you like them best. Now, what about this baby?
I can keep it and put it on the top.
You've got your whole lot of tomatoes together, and now we're going to slice them up, cut them up, mix them, and then we'll have a salad. I hope it's going to be a good salad.
In the next discussion, Prof. Henning and Khadija show how the theoretical framework she used in her study guided her data analysis process.
Khadija, many years ago, you went to a conference. I think it was 10 years ago. What did you enjoy most about that conference in 2008, the International Society for Cultural and Activity Theory?
There were many things that were enjoyable. One of the prominent aspects of it was meeting those great minds, Juche Engelstrom and Alex Kazulin, but also being introduced to activity theory and activity systems, and which was why I eventually moved into my thinking for my study because of that.
What were the 3 activity systems that you used in your analysis?
Okay, the first was the practicum, the second the school, and the third the teacher education program at the university.
You got interested in this, and at the same time, your university started something very interesting. They built a little primary school on the campus, and they started a teacher education program for the foundation phase, for the first few grades of school. Why did you keep a logbook?
Initially, it was we were planning on doing a book, but most of it was because it was a story that I wanted to keep about what was going on, like a diary, like you said. So every day it was just making notes. This is what happened. This is how it happened. And I didn't initially think that it would be used for a PhD. So I was writing everything that was going on. Where we went, what we did, who we met, what we learned, what conference venue we went to, what the speakers were speaking about on a particular day. And at the end, every evening, when we got together as a group, we spoke about the different aspects of where we went. And in those discussions, I also made notes about what learnings came out of those evening discussions that we had. So all of those things came together in my logbook, diary.
So you kept a really detailed diary of so many different things. You were also part of the founding of the school, so you have close experience of what went on there.
Yes.
You know, in research we would refer to someone like you as a practitioner researcher, researching a practice in which you are involved. That's hard. But you didn't know that you were doing this for research. So that's actually quite good because you kept this logbook innocently almost. And then you became really close to the school because you organized the practicum. It's as if you were almost looking into the future, thinking, I'm going to need all of this. So when was this school founded? In 2010?
Yes.
And before that, there was lots of planning.
Yes.
And you kept a record until the first big evaluation of the school in 2017.
2017.
So that's a lot of data. But by that time, you were also doing a doctorate.
Yes.
And here, in your own hands, you had a set of data which one can only dream of. That is what we're going to talk about a little bit.
Now we will see how Prof. Henning guided Khadija to manage her data. In other words, to organize her data in a logical way.
What did you do with all that data? Because apart from that data, you also had other data. But let's first talk about that. How did you go about organizing these different types of documents and stories and photographs and videos and memorandums of agreement and a whole range of things? It sounded to me like a bureaucratic nightmare. How did you find your way in the middle of all of that?
It was quite difficult because I tried clustering things that happened that are similar, but then it became too complicated, so I put it into different years as they happened.
Okay.
And then I moved on a sort of timeline. I used that method. So in 2008, this is what we did. In 2009, that's what we did, and so on until 2017.
But that's a lot of disparate data in all directions. So
Yes.
how did you group them when you had finished, put them into a timeline? It's just like a history book. What did you then do with what you found in the timeline?
Yes.
Did you look what is dominant, or did you just use intuition?
No, I also looked at what was dominant, and because I was so immersed in the actual process, being a practitioner researcher, as you put it, I also had intuition as to which direction this was going, and I looked at what are the similar components in each year. What was the same in the, for example, how the children were the dominant ones throughout the period of time, what the students were doing throughout the period of time, what kind of research was happening at the same time, so what different themes were coming out from that.
So when you organized your timeline, you clustered in each period all the things that belong together.
Yes.
It's a little bit like the tomatoes you showed me at some point.
Yes.
I now think of that. There were some tomatoes that you didn't like.
Yes. And there were also times within the 7 years where there were incidences at the school that I didn't like, or part of the information that was coming through from the students and from the teachers that were not very pleasant, but it was part of the data.
So that's a good thing to mention. You can't decide which data is good or bad. You have to include all of it. Otherwise,
Yes.
you're not a researcher. Congratulations, Dr. Petke, that you have a thesis now. When I looked at your thesis, I saw that the most prominent data from those 10 years, 19 years, was the ideal of making the school a research-based teacher education school. I don't want to talk about what a research-based teacher education program looks like, but that intrigued me. So this school was trying to be a part of a research-based teacher education program. Where does that come from? The title of your study, which has to do with a model or something that was copied or transferred from Finland?
Yes, it was, we tried to model a teaching school, a practice school for training teachers, student teachers. So we used that model and built on that for our practicum.
Well, how did you do that timeline with the frequencies on it? Did you do it with a computer?
I used a computer in the end, but initially I used pictures and story. It was a storyline, and then I started putting it together using a computer.
And using software.
Yes.
So, but before the software, before you put the data onto the software, because that's also a type of migration, you used what you knew about teacher education and about schools to manage your data. Could I, for instance, because I don't work in schools, could I have done it like that? Could I have been somebody who knows how to organize data about the founding of a school? I don't think so. I don't have experience. I can do it with universities, but I can't do it with a school because I don't have the background. Why would I say something like you had optimal background? Because you were there all the time. You bought the books, the furniture, found kids to come to the school, helped to find teachers to teach in the school, helped to find some funding, I think. So you were in it so much. Didn't you lose your perspective sometimes?
I did. I forgot sometimes that I had to take a step back and not immerse myself so much in everything that was happening. So that was a bit of a challenge.
And when you wrote your PhD?
I had to look at it from a researcher perspective and still keep my distance.
What was really the biggest challenge for you in this data analysis?
There was too much data, and I was overwhelmed, and I was afraid, and many times I wanted to give up. but it's also because I was so engrossed in the data, wanting to know more and delving deeper into the history. And eventually I was in the middle of things and I felt like I couldn't get out and I was drowning. And then my supervisor assisted me to get out of that drowning mode and said, you have to step back and look at the data in a specific way and focus. So it was a daunting task when I immersed myself so much in the data.
Some people don't know what a practicum is.
Okay, it's when the student teachers go to a school and they observe or they teach, or they work with the teachers and the children in the school so that they are able to practice how to become teachers, how to be teachers. Okay. And then it's the entire process of working out a cycle of how they will be going to the school, which days they don't go to the school, which days they fit in the the curriculum at the university, the time at the university to when they go to the school. So it's a kind of cycle that happens. So in the cycle they do lesson planning with groups. They work in groups all of the time. The next week they would do a micro lesson and be evaluated by their peers and perhaps a teacher or a lecturer. And the following week they would teach the lesson to the children at the school.
Well, what I found in your data when you awarded codes were words like robust and rigorous and repeat and revise. You know, so it seemed to me as if that free range area became a bureaucratic area and then a very systematic practicum where students really have a good opportunity to learn. Khadija, you had so many codes. I mean, I saw in your addendum to your thesis. Which one of those codes stood out for you as soon as you started and you saw how many there were of them?
There were so many codes, like you say. It was overwhelming. But the one that stands out for me the most is service learning. From the service learning, there were different codes that came in there as well. And eventually, we found that it was part of the theme, one of the main themes. So the service learning component was at the beginning of our phase, in the early years. The students used that as a form of structure for the way they planned their lessons and how they could work with the children. And that eventually became their stable place, using the service learning and the different steps of how to plan a sports event or any kind of activity that they were doing. And that was one of the codes that stood out.
So you're telling me that little code about doing extramural things in the school became the model for them to plan their lessons. Didn't they have a lesson plan then?
Initially, they didn't have a lesson plan.
And what is service learning, by the way, for those who don't know?
It's a form of experiential learning where students use content that they are taught in class and they take it back into a community and do a practical version of what they do in the classroom in a content form.
That's now your story data, your narrative data as a practitioner researcher. But you also have some other data. Now it's getting interesting. You have interviews with the students. What did you find? I mean, you recorded the interviews, you wrote them down verbatim, and then you analyzed them and awarded codes. Can you recall some of the main codes you awarded of the early students?
Yeah.
When they were saying they feel so and so.
Yeah, I remember mainly that they weren't very happy. It was in the free range stage. That was the initial stages. But they were also learning from each other in ways that we didn't expect them to. We didn't expect them to work so well with group work and learning from each other in their pairs or in their groups.
And as it became more systematic, I noted in the codes that the words structure and organize and plan and tutorials, these became much more prominent. And you ended up by saying, we don't like to hear that, we professors of education. We don't like to hear that students actually learn more from each other than from us. But even recently in the interviews, that came out.
Yes,
It's mind-blowing, but it's also so encouraging, isn't it?
it is.
So when you looked at your 2 sets of data plus some questionnaires with the same objective to find out from whom do the students learn and when do they learn. Now there you also awarded codes, you also clustered them into categories, and now you sat there with different categories from different sources and you had to put them all together, like in a salad or a stew. And you did that systematically. Khadija, which were your main data sources? I think you mentioned 3.
Yes. The one was the logbook, the second one, student questionnaires, and the third, student interviews.
How did you bring that together?
In the beginning, there was confusion, and people were not sure how everything fits together. But over the period of time, things started working together. It's not perfect, but they were working together. So when we looked at the 3 systems, we started to see that there were certain things that were similar, things were working, and there were things that weren't working.
So that's your main finding, and you have, I see, a whole range of themes as findings,
Yes.
but that's something to be talked about later. So when you did your analysis, if I can put it together like this, it started with a logbook, which became a main part of your data. About how much of your data came from that logbook?
The bulk of it.
The bulk of it.
Yeah.
So would that be 50, 60%, 70%?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you had interviews and questionnaires. And then you had you. There comes the analyst. And that is why a thesis is something that demands of you to do detailed analysis and to leave a detailed trail of how you did it. And that you put in your extra material for your PhD, and that was quite heavy.
Yes.
Lots of documents, lots of papers, lots of photos. Why did you put in so many photos?
I think because pictures, people tend to see things better when they look at a picture other than reading. And the pictures captured the essence of what actually happened over the period of time.
Khadija, you had so many codes, a whole mountain of codes, and we can see the magnitude of it in the addenda to your study. I still wonder how you managed to squeeze it all together into such coherent findings. You said that service learning surfaced very quickly, very soon in your data analysis, and that actually it became an anchor code that led to a category or two and eventually became a theme in your study and a main finding.
Yes.
That's quite remarkable and quite unexpected, because service learning as a code seemed initially something small.
Yes, it did. Yes.
So when I read your chapter 5, can I go back to chapter 4 and trace the evidence of what you are arguing for?
Yes, all that has to be in there.
And you did it.
Yes.
Because you had a strict supervisor, I guess. 2
yes.
strict supervisors.
Yes.
And a very strict doctoral committee. And really very thorough examiners. So I think when we read the reports, the reviews of your work, that's the thing that stands out most. Most of the people who write assessments of theses and dissertations say, the analysis was not clear. I'm not entirely happy with this. I don't know how you could come to these conclusions, because that chapter in which you show us your analysis, the way your mind worked, which tools you used, how you applied them and how you integrated them, if that's not there, you have no argument, because you have no evidence. And then the judge will say, sorry, the case for the applicant for the PhD has not succeeded. Yours has succeeded. Well done.
Thank you.
Here are some important facts to remember when you code and analyze your data.
While many students believe that data analysis only starts once all data are collected, this is not entirely accurate. In fact, data collection and analysis are recursive processes. You organize and analyze your data as you collect it. This will prevent you from becoming overwhelmed by the sheer volume of the data. Remember, Khadija spoke about drowning in her data? If you want to work effectively in the analysis process, the data need to be extremely well organized. This means that at the beginning, you have to develop a system for naming and storing data for easy retrieval, especially if you have many data sources. Khadija had data from various sources, and it amounted to quite a lot. So, she had to be very organized. During the data analysis process, the framing of the data is important. Some people refer to this as the theoretical framework, others speak about an analytical framework. But the fact is, one does have tools to use when working with the data. This can be regarded as a type of lens. In this film series, we referred previously to students' examples of the theoretical framing that they had used. For instance, Refilwe utilized the Thomas and Brown model to examine how student teachers make teaching tools. Researchers make use of different methods and techniques. For example, if you work with transcribed interviews, you could code the data inductively according to a specific method. Some people, for instance, use grounded theory techniques to analyze qualitative data. There are various quantitative data analysis techniques too, for those students who use statistical methods. Khadija coded large volumes of data inductively. At some point, she used Lee Schulman's typology of teacher knowledge as a framework for categorizing the codes. For review purposes, you have to leave a trail of every step of analysis. This makes your analysis process more believable and reliable. This has to be captured very explicitly. It is advisable to give examples of the various stages of the analysis, beginning with examples of raw data throughout the process to the final results. Tables, figures, descriptions of the process, all of these serve as evidence for the reliability of your work. Some students work manually and capture their work on charts or notes. These representations could be placed into their dissertation or thesis. In this way, you provide a further account of your process, consolidating your audit trail, which serves as a chain of evidence of your analytical work.